And then we have economic losses. Of course, I already spoke about the health costs of the food systems, the fact that our food systems today, our diets are the largest driver of health costs. But there are others also. If we look at greenhouse gas emissions, the IMF has estimated that the total cost, including externalities, storms, cyclones, floods, droughts, and the cost of that damage over time, the annual cost of the externalities and the subsidies of fossil fuels is over $5.2 trillion per year. $5.2 trillion US dollars of economic costs due to the externalities of energy and the fact that we are still continuing with fossil fuels despite this cost. My project T many years ago, 10 years ago, had made an estimate of the cost of deforestation on land around the world as a result of, again, the poor governance that drives it, and the economic cost of that was $2.5 to $4 trillion per annum, right? My friends, this business as usual approach that we are following, driven by poor governance, driven by lack of recognition of the value of nature and the value of human life and the value of human health and wealth, this kind of system is essentially not going to lead us to any kind of health or happiness in the future. And certainly our grandchildren and their descendants are not going to thank us if this is the kind of world that we leave behind for them. So this is not just about sustainability, not just about the Brundtland Commission's report and so on. This is about that relationship between you and your future, you and your descendants. This is the legacy that you leave to them. And we as corporate citizens, we as leaders in the corporate world, we don't want to be thought of like this. I know you don't, and I certainly don't. So we need to make a few key changes in the way that we think about our economic system. And the first, and in my opinion, the most important change is to recognize externalities. Supposing I make cars, I sell cars, I make a profit, I am happy, you drive the car, you are happy. But somebody else might suffer from the air pollution of the car and suffer a respiratory problem, and yet somebody else might suffer from the greenhouse gas emissions of that car, and their property by the coastline might sink. These are the externalities of a transaction where I, as the maker of cars, sold you a car as the driver of a car. When we did this transaction, we didn't think about this. We just thought of the profit I make and the utility that you get from driving a car. It's that mindset that has to change. When we transact, we need to think wider than just what I do, what you do. There was an old Japanese saying that, profit is good, but it has to be profit for the buyer, profit for the seller, and profit for society. That's the kind of thinking. This is 350 years ago from the merchants of Omi Hochiman. And that kind of thinking was there in the merchant communities of 350 years ago in Japan. That's the kind of thinking that we need. Well-being for people, well-being for society at the same time as profits for the company. And that can't happen if you have negative externalities.